Welcome to People Who Plan, Inside the Minds of Modern Operators with Michael Rossiter and Jeremy Pomp. This week we're in conversation with Aaron Hoag, the Vice President of Operations at First Day, the leader in the children's vitamin and supplement space. Prior to joining First Day, Aaron was the COO of Goop and an executive at a number of well-known companies, including Kendo Brands, Hatch Beauty, Paracone MD, and Cost Plus World Market. Welcome to the pod, Aaron. Let's get started.
Aaron, thanks for joining the pod this week. We're really excited to have you on. Your background is amazing. Former COO at Goop, VP at Kendo, and a host of other brands. And so it's just really awesome to have you be a part of this. Welcome to the pod.
All right. Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, Aaron, this is a question I ask all of our guests before we get into the interview. Are you a planner in real life? Do you plan things? Do you plan everything down to the details in your real life, or is your real life just absolute chaos?
You can tell from grinning that I am absolutely a planner in real life, which some of the people that are closest to me some of them find it humorous and some of them find it annoying. It doesn't mean I'm not. I think one of the complaints you may get from some people when you say you're a planner is, oh, well, you're not so spontaneous. No, I can be spontaneous. Hey, we should go do this. But then I want to know where, when, who, what's it going to be? Like, you can be spontaneous and do things on short notice, but I absolutely plan it out. I'll give you a really quick random example from a few years ago. It was actually a really good learning opportunity for my boys as well. They were much younger, but we'd always wanted to go to Croatia. It's been on our bucket list forever. So finally figured out we're going to go to Croatia. I'm the planner. I had the whole thing planned in a spreadsheet, all the dates, where we're going to stay and everything. I had my boys pick 2 days in the trip. I'm going to tell you which city or town it is, and you're going to go do your own research, and I want you to plan the day. And then you're going to prepare a very simple 3-4 page Google presentation of your plan for that day. At first, they kind of grumbled about it, but it was a great educational opportunity for them. And then they had them present it to the family. They walked us through, like, we're going to go here, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to see. I said, you need to find something of historical significance, something of cultural significance. And they had a big kick out of it. And then when we got there, they were super excited. Like, they were invested in it, which in the past, they weren't invested at all. It was fantastic. Really cool.
Wonderful. You came here to learn about planning, but you didn't know this was also a parental podcast. We'll teach you all things about how to be a great dad. That's amazing. What a great story. When your boys grow up and we have them on the podcast and we ask them, how did you end up becoming a planner? We'll know their dad drilled it into them at a very young age.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Take us through how you got your start in planning. How did you venture into this world? We find a lot of folks fall into it by accident. Was that the case for you?
It's sort of. I've been in operations my entire career. I sort of fell into operations. When I got started my career, I wasn't working for brands. I wasn't working for retailers. I started out in customs brokerage, moved from there into air export, and then just started learning all the different modes of transport. I worked for a couple of very large freight forwarders, and then I ended up working for a startup for 8 years. I actually had a full-time job when I was in college. I was already working full-time in freight forwarding. I did that for 3 years, and then I jumped ship to a mom and pop startup. They were really tiny, and I worked with them for 8 years, and they really expanded to grow. It was a really, really great way to start my career, and I learned so much. But I was immediately made the operations manager. While I wasn't planning inventory, I was playing with other people's inventory. And that's actually why I got into retail and brands. I did this for 8 years, and I'm like, I'm tired of being on the provider side. I want to go to the customer side of the fence. I was playing with other people's inventory and dealing in real time with different brands and companies, whether export, import, or domestic. We were talking about the scenario planning, like, can I pull this forward? Can I push this out? That is part of what we did, collaborating with inventory planners at all these different companies and having to plan out shipments for a long time, or if it was order fulfillment, because we did order fulfillment as well. It's like planning out what that forecast looks like. But especially when it came to inbound and outbound inventory, dealing with that in real time and having to build transportation forecasts was a key part of the role. And so that's how I got started into actual planning. It was more planning logistics and freight related to inventory, but getting a feel for that. And it really prepared me for my role when I jumped ship out of the startup after 8 years. I went to Cost Plus World Market, the retailer, and went into international supply chain, which is 70% back then of what they did. It was almost all import from around the world. Um, that's when, everything, it made it really easy. Everything clicked and connected. It's like, okay, we're tying shipments to production plans from our factories to what needs to go into distribution centers. And we're going through our weekly open to buy and figuring out, big company, of course, lots of planners, different people, figuring out where do we need to place new replan? How do we expedite things for what we call our shops, our center of store shops, and for events? So that's how I fell into it. And then from there, went into other brands where I had a much more direct hand in inventory planning.
Gotcha. And you're from the Bay Area, you grew up here, and startup culture is so pervasive, right? So much of
Yes.
a thing in the Bay Area. That startup you were at for 8 years, what did that look like when you made that move to the bigger company? How did the role change? And what were you able to take from those early experiences to the larger company?
Great question. On a positive side, something I brought with me from the startup to that big corporate environment that served me very well was that sense of urgency, number one, which I'm sorry to say, I'm just being honest. Lots of large corporations claim that they're agile and they move fast. They don't. You just can't compare it to startup or early stage equity backed companies. It's night and day. But having that sense of urgency and bringing that into my role was a great benefit to me as well as to the team, and instilling that into the team. I'd say the second thing, when you're a startup or you're an early stage equity backed company, there's very much I would call it a DIY, do it yourself mindset. If you're not a self starter, you're not like one of these, I don't know, but I'm going to go figure it out. You're not going to make it in the startup world or the DIY world or the early stage equity backed world. And you know this in the Bay Area with startups. They come up with a product like, I have this great idea. I don't know how I'm going to do this and how I'm going to monetize it, but I'll figure it out. Bringing that into the company benefited me a lot, something that was a pro and also a con, because those two pieces were very beneficial for me in my career, going into Cost Plus World Market, a big company, but then running into other people in other departments where that wasn't their mindset at all. It was like, I'm waiting, like, well, that's not my role or responsibility, or I'm going to wait for somebody to tell me what to do, or I don't have a tool to do that, so therefore I'm not going to do it. Not that they have a bad attitude, of course. It's just that's the culture and the mindset. I would say the downside to that, of course, that was an adjustment was, it's great that you have a sense of urgency. It's great that you have this scrappy, we're going to figure it out. In the startup world, you can get away with a lot of like, we'll figure out the documented SOP later, right? Or we'll have a more structured system later. We just need to move forward as fast. Pour gasoline on the fire, let's go. There are very good reasons in larger organizations, even medium-sized organizations, where some level of structure, discipline, and process is really important. And that was something I had to adjust to, and very appropriate, by the way. I want to be very clear about that. It was really good.
Yeah, so that like maybe pulling on this thread a little bit. So like one dimension is company size and stage. The other dimension is the centrality of operations and logistics to and planning to like what they do and why they win, right? So there's this notion of you started your career in freight forwarding in that world, and then you move into brands. Brands are all about marketing, product, and ops is there to support. You still got to get the job done. It's like, I'm curious the contrast between the two, where you're kind of like the show being in freight forwarding, planning logistics versus being in, I don't know, a support or enablement role. How do you navigate that?
In full transparency, I navigated it very well. One of the things I learned at the startup, if any of my old teams were here, they would chuckle. One of my Aaronisms is we need to be geared to say yes. And this is something I learned at the startup. I remember when I first joined, I was amazed at how the founders would steal huge chunks of business from massive companies. Other competitors had way more resources, way more dollars, larger teams. I was like, how do they do this? And one of the lessons I learned was, we want to say yes as much as possible, and we need to figure out a way, how do we say yes? And I've took that mentality with me throughout my entire career, even up until most recently. And I've tried to instill that in my teams. I've said, we want to be an operations and a supply chain team and an inventory planning team that is geared to say yes. And it doesn't mean we blindly say yes. You don't want to be yes people. You don't want to overcommit and overpromise. But the philosophy is such that if we're over consuming, and if something is just knocking it out of the park, it's dramatically exceeding forecast, and like, how do we double down on that, strengthen our strengths? Okay, we can't just say, no, we're going to go out of stock, tough luck. okay, no, we need to be geared to say yes. If somebody's coming to us say, hey, we need to increase velocity for these two items. We're thinking of bundling them together, but then we want to change, I'm making this up. We want to change the packaging format to make it a smaller trial size pack. And we want to do two of them and we want to do it by this date. Can you do it? You don't want to just blindly say, no, well, that's not within our lead times. No, we can't do it. It's like, let me look into it and get back to you. Say, here's what we can do. Here's the ROI for that. Here's a trade-off. We can do this by this date, but it's going to cost X amount of money. Most of the time it's time and money. Something's exceeding demand and we can't go out of stock. And what can we do? Well, let's air freight some raws. Let's do this. This is all part of the planning process. And how do we pull this forward? How do we be geared to say yes?
It's similar to an adage I was taught back in our Tesla days, find a way or make a way. That's how you grow. That's how you succeed. But how do you operationalize and make that consistent? It's not a constant fire drill, not a constant heroic efforts. And there's this balance between finding a way, make a way versus, okay, but we're all just burnt out all the time. How do you approach that?
No, it's a great question. And I would say post big corporate world, most of the companies I worked for have been small to medium-sized equity companies, some early stage growth, some medium stage, but similar environments. And it's always that balance of how do you balance the tactical day-to-day firefighting versus the strategic vision and the long-term sustainable world that you want to be in so it doesn't feel like firefighting every day. And I think the challenge for almost every company I've been in, even big ones, is finding that balance. It's much easier to get sucked into day-to-day firefighting versus focusing on the long-term sustainable path. So it's a long way of saying another thing that I've always worked on myself, but also with my teams, is the firefighting is important. There's things that tactically have to be done every day. We need to force ourselves to take a breath and force ourselves to rise above the trenches and look across the field to see, okay, this is really painful. We want to continue to support this, but how do we do it in a way that is, I use these words all the time, sustainable, predictable, and repeatable. And you can't get there overnight, whether it's the tools that we're using and how we augment them or what new tools we need to make some of these decision points easier so that we're not spending so much time on this geared to say yes mentality.
And no way or make a way. Turning the crank on the plan shouldn't require heroics. If it does, that you're sort of like using those heroics on something that should, like, for things that are easy or routine, make sure they're easy, routine, and automated. It shouldn't require heroics to run the plan. You still want to be able to do heroics to just say yes or find a way and make a way, whatever you call it, like, right? But to do that, you've got to put the right structure and process in place for the routine. We talk about playing at two speeds or like win the game you're in, right? So it's like you got to play at win this current month, quarter, whatever, and win the long term. And it's like, how do you do both at the same time? Because it's
Right.
like firefighting to win today and never get to the long term. You got to put a system in place, and that system gets stronger. The core system gets bigger and stronger as you go.
Aaron, I wanted to transition to ask you your time in the beauty sector. You make this transition and you've worked at a number of amazing companies at high levels. Take me through what makes that business different than your other experiences as an operator, as a planner. What makes the beauty industry unique, and what are some trends you've seen in that industry and trends happening now?
I think first and foremost, it's a very creative industry, right? Fashion is also similar, not the same, but very similar vibe. It's heavily creative driven. And that brings a unique culture. If it's a home furnishings company or other companies, there's a creative element to that. But when it comes to beauty specifically, you're creating, whether it's color cosmetics or skincare or body care or hair care, whatever it is, there is a very, very heightened sense of creativity there. And that creative mindset drives so much of the innovation and where you're headed. There's a lot of focus on trend and where you are in the marketplace and what you're trying to be in the marketplace. So you're dealing with, I can only speak to my own experience and based on other companies I worked for that weren't in beauty, of course, but I would say the biggest contrast is you're dealing with that creative pull and push, and you're dealing with a more heavy creative culture where, for people in planning and logistics and operations, things are a little bit more black and white, 2 + 2 = 4, that kind of thing. The creative mindset is very different, especially dealing with founder CEOs where legitimately, appropriately, they have a creative vision and want to drive to it as fast as possible. That's partly why they're successful, similar to any other startup, is like really driving that. So trying to balance what they're trying to do creatively with what is operationally possible. I would say that's one of the more challenging factors. From a planning perspective specifically, in beauty, you're talking about formulated products. You're not buying what I would call typical hard goods. You're not buying a piece of furniture. You're not buying a table. You're making formulated products. All the beauty companies I've worked for have been non-turnkey. We are developing, sourcing, and procuring the packaging. In some cases, we're also procuring some of the raws. And then you're contracting with contract manufacturers and placing purchase orders there. So you have a very complex planning model. You have to forecast, obviously, the demand for that finished good. And you can have huge SKU complexity when you start getting to color. It gets really crazy, 50 different shades of foundation, for example.
Yeah.
So you have to do your aggregate demand at the top for the finished goods. That in turn is going to drive all the different components. Like you could have a cap, a jar, a pump, an insert, a label, a unit carton, like an inner carton. Oh, we're gonna support the raw for this. Now I got to worry about the raw material, the usage factor. It gets really complicated. So it's not just a matter of having a demand plan for that formulated finished product. It's, well, now I need to drive it for the co-man, the contract manufacturer, for all of my packaging suppliers, all the raw material inputs. It gets very complex very fast. All those have different lead times depending on where you're sourcing and who's producing it. And all that has to tie together. It's a very complex picture.
A complex picture, and how do you keep track of it all?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really good spreadsheets, of course.
Really good
Yes, you
spreadsheets.
took the words out of my mouth.
Really good spreadsheets with vast formulas. Interesting hearing you talk about beauty. It reminded me, like it felt like you were talking about a startup, the creativity in that. I would have wondered if there's some parallels there that draws you to it. And do you see that?
I do. I've continued to work in the beauty and personal care sector, partially because of that. Like, I feel like there's a lot of fulfillment in going to work every day. And don't get me wrong, like these are challenging, fast-paced environments, just like a startup. But it's fun to go into work and know that every week you're making decisions and you're executing against things, that you're making things happen in real time very quickly. I'm a big skincare guy, believe it or not. So skincare is my thing. I have a full routine. I've volunteered my arm and face at these companies, and we need your skin tone. Go for it. Paint me up. But regardless of whether I use the color or not, like I enjoy going into a Sephora, Ulta, or a Nordstrom Blue Mercury and seeing my brand's product on the shelf and knowing that I helped bring that there. Being given a really, I don't want to say impossible task, but that's what happens in startups as well. And saying like, hey, we want to launch a different shade of lip stain or lipstick or something, or we want to launch this very specific item, but we need to do it in this short time frame because we want to take advantage of X, Y, and Z. Geared to say yes. How do we do this? Let's figure out a way we can make this happen, and here's how we do it. I'm very proud of some really challenging product launches over the years across the many companies I worked for, where you really made some magic happen, and then seeing that, not just the sales portion, but seeing that product is there, and I had a direct hand in that because we had some really creative planners and some really creative operational hands.
That's funny. You were talking about that, and Aaron, seeing your product on the shelves and so forth. And yeah, it's like now being able, like having all these like beauty brands, personal care, food and beverage brands, and being like, oh, like I'm walking through the aisles of Whole Foods. I can see my clients on the shelves. Yeah, it is fun. Definitely had that back in the day at Tesla, where it was like you'd come to Boston or New York, and like you'd see a couple, and it was like crazy because you didn't expect to see in California. You'd see a lot. Um, there's a lot of emotion there.
One of the things we've spoken about recently, Michael and I had a lot of times we were in the S&OP meetings. I'm in there hoping no one calls on me. I don't want to get called out. The stakes are so high and everything. But I wonder, what does successful S&OP meeting look like from someone from your perspective? How does that work in concert of getting everyone on the same page and preparedness? Is meeting once a month the right way to do it? Should it be different? From your perspective as an executive, what do you want to see when you go into those meetings?
I would say, in a word, I'm going to oversimplify, of course. It's always dangerous when you use a single word, but the thing I'm looking for and want in that meeting more than anything is open collaboration, or really just collaboration. lots of people speak to it, but the behavior doesn't always meet the words, if that makes sense. Specific to S&OP, I'm talking about, of
Yeah.
course. So, my bread and butter, tried and true brass tacks is you're having a formal, structured monthly S&OP meeting. Obviously, as the operations team, the inventory planning teams, we're the ones that are formulating the data points, the tables, anything for that particular company or brand. What's important to us? Every company is different, of course, but we're the ones bringing the materials to the table to discuss. In theory, a result of previous meetings that we've had or previous lines of communication we've had with all the different touch points with sales and marketing, supply and everything else, and also finance. But what I really wanted out of that meeting, that monthly meeting, is collaboration and input from others, the key stakeholders, finance, sales, marketing, in addition to just the ops team bringing it to the table. Outside of that monthly meeting, specific to D2C or the e-commerce world, like you're going to have your monthly aggregate demand roll up, which in turn drives your supply plan for your finished goods and all your components that go into it. But for me, it's very important. You're also having weekly touch points with ecom because that beast can change so fast and you can have huge spikes in either directions for a variety of reasons based on your paid marketing spend, based on Meta had an outage, for example, or something happened to the Amazon page ranking. That's a little bit different than D2C, but kind of a similar bucket. So it's really important to me that you have those weekly touch points. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to change your monthly MRP or your monthly supply plan for that, but being able to view those spikes up or down in real time and be able to react to them is important. The collaboration piece is key. I'm not afraid to get called on in the meeting, but I'm usually the one with a thicker skin for my team to take some of those punches and whatnot. And that's what I mean from collaboration. It's like, this is supposed to be a collaborative meeting where we're presenting what's going on, where we have risk to the business, both from a sales perspective and from an inventory perspective, and both relate to cash flow. We're presenting the data, facts, the information. We're seeking alignment in this meeting for this is the S&OP plan that we've all aligned to, and this is what we're going to march to. You need that collaboration, that openness from other partners. The process is there to illuminate and find transparency to everything that's going on in the business from a sales and operation and planning perspective, hence S&OP. And it should be very transparent and brass tacks of this is what the reality of what's going on. Here's what we're proposing. Here's where we are with forecast accuracy and the supply plan. This equates to where we are with the business. It shouldn't be a blame game, in my opinion.
I want to be in your S&OP meeting. Aaron, is AI the end of the world or the beginning of the world?
Great question. I joke with my boys whenever we see a Waymo on the street. I always joke with them. I thought Skynet was supposed to be science fiction. No, like any technology, you think about social media, the internet, you can go back even further than that, but I'm going to use a digital age. AI is just like any other technology or tool that revolutionary technology tools come out. It has the capacity to do wonderful, great things that can make our jobs easier, make our lives easier, can help us to move faster on things. And I think it also has the ability to be negative as well, right? It's like any other technology. There's pros and cons to that. I have high hopes in inventory planning for how AI can help make us more dynamic and adaptive rather than people going to spreadsheets or other tools and having to crunch a bunch of different screens and numbers to get an answer. Having AI as a backdrop to be adaptive and enable some dynamic reasoning in real time to get you those answers faster, that's really great for people, specific to planning and ops. But AI as a whole, capacity to do some wonderful things and some capacity to do some not so great things. We've seen it with social media. There's some great things about social media that bring people together, and there's some really negative, horrible things about social media when it comes to social media addiction and some of the things that you see out there. So I feel like AI is kind of in that same bucket. Great capacity for efficiencies, personal and professional, but also there's a dark side to that as well. It's just a matter, I think, of how we use it and how the technology continues to evolve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got in my first Waymo a few weeks ago and I was blown away. My number one takeaway was how wonderful it is to not have a driver in the car for the passengers so that you can just be free to speak. Like and not have to feel like someone's eavesdropping on your conversation. That was like the biggest thing.
I've taken two Waymos. One was a good experience, and I agree with you. I like that as well. The second one was not a great experience, where the Waymo dropped us off. It dropped us off the right address, but it went down this weird, Santa Monica in LA, that's where I live, is full of alleys. It went through the alley to the backside of the address, And then it pulled up so close to the building that we couldn't open the door to get out. And then we couldn't figure out how to get the Waymo to move forward. And we're contacting support. One experience like, this is great. This is so easy. And the second experience is like, I'm stuck in the car and I can't get out. Pros and cons, good and bad.
You can escape via the trunk.
Yeah. It got resolved quickly, but it was still a little annoying in that moment of like, hi, like you stopped in a very weird, like, what am I supposed to do now? So, but Waymos are everywhere down here.
Michael, you never taken one?
I've never taken a Waymo. Boston is very conservative when it comes to adopting new technology and adopting new things. So I think it'll be a while.
Well, Michael, when we go to Vegas, we'll hop in one together. We'll be there for Manifest in a month.
Manifest conference. Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Yeah. Be, I don't know, Jeremy, are you a gambler?
No, I don't gamble.
I don't gamble at all.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean, yeah. I don't I would I mean I wish I had that thing that made it exciting for me, but I'm too analytical.
Probably a good
The,
That's a
the
good thing.
expected value here is negative. It feels like a waste of my time. If there was a positive expected value, I would be a huge gambler.
If you were the casino, there would be the positive expected value. That's what gambling is.
Over my house for a poker game. We'll set it up right away.
Aaron, thank you so much for your time. Close this now so you
Thank
can get back to work.
I appreciate the time. Really fun and enjoyable. Happy to do it again sometime.
It's great to get to know you more. I look forward to more conversations like this. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.